Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Promethean Podcast. My name is Xavier Walt for Carter Lansdale and Maddie Schaefer, and this edition of the podcast will look ever so slightly different, as this will be a double-header edition of the podcast, featuring both the April and May edition of the Promethean, both of which are available at our website at uws-promethean.com. To begin with, we'll start with April. Once again, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers was back in the Twin Ports area. This time, it was for UWS receiving an executive order to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. The UW system will provide more updated information to confirm whether the president's order will affect federal student aid in the current semester. Evers was also talking with Douglas County veterans about discussing the $4.1 billion budget proposal for veterans. In campus news, there's a new club on campus open to students and community members between the ages of 18 and 26, and this is called the Superior Rotaract Club. There were parking lot changes in Lot 7 near the Holden Fine Arts Center and the Jim Dan Hill Library, as well as Lot 2 near Old Main and Swenson, and lastly, Lot 2 between Burger King and the Pilgrim Lutheran Church has also received changes. UWS hosted its 25th annual Cultural Night recently, where students and community members get to showcase all their different cultures. Other stories in the April edition of the Promethean were glitter jars with the Yellow Jackets activity crew, and UWS Kruk Gallery hosted Illusion of Certainty. All of these stories, again, are available at uws-promethean.com or on our various social medias. And now, into May. UWS had its annual I Heart UWS Week and its 11th annual Day of Giving. The numbers are not yet confirmed, but Shannon Hoffman, annual giving manager with the UWS Alumni and Friends Foundation, suggested the school received 230 gifts that day, which could amount up to $80,000 in funding for UWS. This can also support 30 different funds and many different scholarships. The Promethean recently was awarded 7 awards from the Wisconsin Newspaper Association. The Promethean had 2 first-place finishes, 3 second-place finishes, and 2 honorable mention finishes at the awards ceremony. UWS is hosting commencement in the coming days on May 17th at Westman Arena at 2 p.m., and doors will open to graduates and guests at noon. Other stories in the May edition were UWS film students grinding to the end of their film projects, as well as Greg Kehl Moore, who is the longest tenured professor of music at the college, is retiring, and UWS recently hosting a campus blood drive, which was located over in the parking lot of the YU. And now, moving over to sports, while certain sports are still being played and some are wrapped up, here is the rundown as we head into May. Baseball just missed out on a tournament berth in the UMAC, finishing 18-29 and 12-9 in conference play. An up-and-down year for the Yellow Jackets was highlighted by Trey Seabrandt, who led the team in batting average and hits, as Maxton Howell led the team in home runs and RBIs. It was pitcher Ben Welly that led the rotation in ERA and strikeouts. Staying on the diamond, softball recently clinched a share of the UMAC regular season championship along with Bethany Lutheran. The Yellow Jackets have a 30-10 record and are 15-3 in conference play. They have the 2 seed in a double elimination tournament, with the winner of the tournament getting an automatic bid into the NCAA National Tournament. Ellie Motzel has recently been at the forefront for the Yellow Jackets, leading them in batting average, home runs, and RBIs, while Abby Mitchell and Bella Garley have been starring on the mound. UWS men's and women's track and field both lost the UMAC Track and Field Outdoor Championships. After leading on the first day, the men finished second in the end. UWS athlete Earl Foster is currently ranked in the top 25 in the nation for javelin throwers. The men had 7 all-conference winners. On the women's side, Hannah Hutton won the women's pole vault event at the Outdoor Championships, and Simone Stevens won the 1,500-meter run and set a new school record in the process. They had 6 all-conference award winners. Both teams still have the NCAA Last Chance qualifier, which starts May 14th. UWS men's and women's tennis both clinched the UMAC North Division regular season championship. While the men's record doesn't show the full story of their season, which ended recently with a heartbreaking loss to Principia in the conference tournament. Igor Gaetan Chavez was named the league's player of the year for the second time in his Yellow Jacket tenure. The women's tennis team has had a dream of a season, winning their first UMAC tournament championship, along with a program high of 10 straight wins. With a 21-5 record, the Jackets are heading down to University of Chicago for their national tournament appearance. Head coach C.J. Schaffner won the Coach of the Year for both men's and women's tennis in the UMAC. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Promethean Podcast, and for one final time, this is Xavier Walt signing off for Maddie Schaefer and Carter Lansdale. Safe travels, everyone, and good night. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Promethean Podcast. My name is Xavier Walt for Maddie Schaefer and Carter Lansdale. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today with me, I have the retiring Greg Kehl Moore of the music department here on campus. Greg, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You are just a few days away as of recording right now from your final day here at the University of Wisconsin-Superior. I just wanted to ask how you're feeling about all of it.
Alternates between being very excited and also being sad. There's so many people here that I truly love, and but at the same time, my wife and I have some adventures planned, and that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, one of the questions that I realized I forgot to ask you, I've always forgotten to ask you, it seems very base, but I've been very curious as to how you actually got started here at campus. How did you find yourself at UWS for the first time?
Well, it kind of depends on how far you want to go back. I'll sort of contract the early part of the story and pick it up at the point where I got the job. So I went to school right out of high school. I got my undergrad way back in the year 1981. And then ancient times, Stone Ages, and then spent 12 years playing rock and roll for a living. And at that point, I was 31 and decided that the rock and roll lifestyle was something I was not cut out as much as I thought I would be. And so I decided to go to grad school. Luckily, I had my bachelor's in hand at that point, so I was able to get into a master's program. I spent the mid-'90s doing my master's degree and doctoral degrees. Before I went to grad school, I had finally made the decision what I really wanted was to be a college professor, a college music professor. Once I figured that out, it was just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and doing what needed to be done. So at the doctoral level, you do your coursework and you also do your dissertation. And at the point that I finished my doctoral coursework, then I was able to start sending out applications to for different jobs. The UW Superior job opened up in the fall of 1997. My predecessor, Dave Hagedorn, took a job down at St. Olaf, for which I am ever grateful. Thank you, Dave, for going to work at St. Olaf. I owe you something for that. Fall of 97, spring of 97, I sent out all my materials, big padded envelope full of all kinds of stuff, and I sent it out. I was sending out, must have sent out probably 10 of those to different jobs that were opening up. And I remember for the UW Superior job, I made it by the postmark deadline with about 10 minutes to spare. I got it into the post office at like 4:50 in the afternoon, and was able to get that thing sent off on time, technically under the wire. And I later learned that my materials hit the department at exactly the same moment that the search committee was meeting. And so they just opened up my stuff and considered me along with the others. And Then on, I remember the date I got the call, July 1st, 1997. The then chair of the department, Art Baumgardner, called me in my little grad student cubby hole that we had an office phone. He calls me on July 1st and says, one of our alternates dropped out. Are you still interested in the position? And I said, yes, I am. Then they brought me up in, I think it was the later part of July. I did my interview. And I can talk a long time about the interview process, but I'll make the story short. It went well, and I was one of two people competing for the job. I was was lucky enough, fortunate enough to be the winner of that competition, as it were. And then I started in the fall semester of 1997.
Wow, perfect. Thank you. That answers every question that I had about how you got to UWS. And then over the course of your tenure here, you mentioned how sort of the most satisfaction that you can get from teaching, and what you explained is that seeing a student that is committed, that has the ability to learn in a specific way and really uses their gifts and really uses their natural gifts to make themselves into almost a whole new musician. And I was just curious if you had almost any examples or any stories about students that you remember getting that emotion towards, like, yes, that's it. I knew that they had that.
Oh yeah. You want me to name names here?
You're welcome. You're welcome too. I assume it's all positive stories about these students. So you're welcome to.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, now I got to figure out which ones I want to talk about. I could talk about a couple from years gone by, Joe Scafidi and Diego Herrera, that were students that came in, and I think that I don't think they'll take offense at this, but I think that their natural gifts were not overwhelming. Let's just say they were not like sort of naturally talented musicians that could do anything just super easy right off the bat, and they got in the trenches, and they battled and fought and persevered and didn't give up. And nowadays they are both music educators and with careers in music. And if you had guessed that's where they would end up at the beginning of their careers here, they even probably would have told you were crazy. But I think those are the kinds of stories that I get the most satisfaction, ones that don't have overwhelming natural gifts, that are able to achieve goals through just perseverance and hard work, and just the idea, don't give up, don't surrender, just keep working. You run into an obstacle, you're having difficulty with something. You just keep working and you overcome that, and at the end of the day, you've accomplished something. Because I still feel that if you get a bachelor in music at UW Superior, you have built a foundation of musicianship that's with you for your entire life, that can never be taken away from you. And that is something that's worthwhile. That is a worthwhile accomplishment, even above and beyond the degree itself, which is still important. But I think that's something that anybody should take pride in. And those are the students that I take the most pride in, is the ones that fought through their difficulties.
Yeah, the ones that really worked their tail off to get where they're at. My dad likes to use this phrase, and I tend to agree with this, is that the most valuable thing you can learn in school is how to learn and how to work. You can learn so much technical ability, you can learn so much little knick-knack from here and there, but learning how to do it for yourself and finding the satisfaction in your work is maybe one of the most important things that you can learn while being a student. And that's something that I live by, and I see you nodding, and so you must get that at least a little bit.
Sure, and I do have to see. It's kind of fun to see the students get so involved and enmeshed in the process of becoming a musician that they sort of become addicted to it. They can become addicted to music, and it's not for everybody. There are those that have had fun in music all through high school, and they loved band or they loved choir or whatever like that. But then once they had to do music as a vocation, to study music, the fun went out of it, and they decided that the music degree was not for them. We've had lots of examples of folks like that. But then sometimes when you get somebody hooked, it's like they get into it, and it's like, okay, they can't imagine themselves doing anything but music at that point, and you know that they're in it they're in it for life, even if their path within music changes along the way, and they end up doing this instead of that. That music background that is something that they'll never lose.
Yeah, I am not a music student here at this school, but I've been involved in music for about the last 2 years or so, as we were in a show together in Ride the Cyclone, and that was my first experience singing, being essentially vocally trained by your lovely wife Tanya, and that was sort of an experience for me in which I believe it was after the concert that winter that I was involved in for the first time. It was Season of Song here at the University of Wisconsin-Superior, and I sent a text to one of my friends, Riley Hinnenkamp, after Season of Song, and the text specifically said, "I get it now. I get it why all of you do this, and I get it why you are all stressed all the time. I completely understand. I hate you all. I hate that I understand it now, but I totally get it. Because I can never leave this behind. I'll never fully be able to leave it behind."
That's awesome. It's starting to sound, Xavier, like music has its hooks in you.
Part of me was about to say unfortunately so, but I really appreciate everything that the arts has done for me and has given me such a broader view of life since I've gotten to this school.
Yeah. Will I embarrass you if I talk about your audition for Ride the Cyclone?
Absolutely not.
So you were the sleeper candidate. You were the one hiding in the weeds. We didn't know who you were, and you freely admitted that you had zero musical background, I suggested maybe that you take voice lessons, and I don't even think you knew what voice lessons were at the time. I think you thought it was like learning to be an announcer or something like that. And anyway, but I'm gonna take credit because I heard something in you. I'm like, this guy's kind of got something going on there. I think he could do this. I really do, and I take credit, along with Tanya, for getting you into Ride the Cyclone, which I think was just, I'll say, I think it was the most successful, artistically, the most successful musical that I've seen mounted at UW Superior, and I'm going back a ways too. So I'm going to take some credit for getting you into the game. So. You can curse me out too, along with everybody else.
I specifically remember thinking that, man, Tanya and Greg are the only two in the world that think I can do this, me included. I felt so in over my head, but you guys welcomed me with open arms. When I apologized for the 72nd time and said I was new to music, you guys just put an arm around me and said, "We'll get there. Don't you worry about it. We're gonna get there." And I think in the end we did, and that was an extremely special experience for me. Just to really, I like to think that I skipped the frying pan and went straight to the fire, sort of thing. But it turned out really, really well.
And you didn't run away screaming. You stayed in, yeah, and you actually started taking voice lessons, once you figured out what those were, and took part in choir, which I hope you continue to do. And who knows, maybe we'll get you to become a music major at some point. What do you think?
At some point down the line, there's been a few people that have told me at least a minor. You can at least take a music minor.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I want to change route here for just a second, because
Sure.
I know how incredibly involved and how passionate you are for jazz here on campus. I wrote a story for the Promethean in which I was able to use the word funkadelic to describe your tenure here at UWS. And so something I want to ask you about is not yours and your students' relation to jazz, but how do you keep students motivated when jazz isn't really their primary genre? How do you respond to that student that says, "Oh, I'm not really into jazz," or "Jazz isn't really my favorite thing," with the same sort of enthusiasm when they say, pick classical music or something like that?
Right. Well, that's a great question you just asked, and it's basically at the forefront of anybody who teaches or who is in music education and in higher education at the college level. You have to. You mentioned classical music. I think it's a similar challenge with classical music as with jazz, actually. These are both artistic forms that are, I will say that those two idioms, classical and jazz, are less central to the culture than they were, say, 40, 50, 60 years ago and before that. Fewer people, young people grow up with that kind of music in their ears from whether it be school or from media or from their parents or whatever. So you're introducing them to new idioms when you are introducing classical and jazz music. With jazz in particular, its profile has fallen way off from the high level that it attained in society in the 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. To the point where it is a tiny, tiny fraction. Jazz represents a tiny fraction of the listening public music consumption, and that's reflected in our students. They come here with knowledge about a lot of different kinds of music, and not often are they well versed in anything having related to jazz. So I kind of have to be the person a lot of times that introduces them to jazz, and I kind of go back to fundamentals. I preach on my soapbox about swing era music. We do a swing dance that's primarily music from that great moment in American cultural history when jazz was the popular music of the country, was everybody was talking about on the radio, and young people were scandalizing their elders by being into this heathen dance music, big band jazz and everything, and then in that great period of what was then called modern jazz of the 1950s and early 60s, where you had the great, the Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley, and I sort of use the jazz program in a way to introduce my students to that tradition, and sort of to show that it has value, that it shouldn't be just the 100th option on Spotify or whatever. It should be, it should be a part of your musical diet, and plus there's so many different styles within jazz. If you don't like one, then there's probably something else that you might like. If you don't like Dixieland, maybe you'll like fusion, maybe you'll like the big bands. So I kind of see it as my role to introduce students to jazz that haven't had that have little to no exposure to it.
I don't have anything to say about that. You answered that question so well in like such a whole way that I don't really have much to rebut with. So I guess we're running out of time here. So the last question that I want to ask you is, I'm sure that we'll see you around the Twin Ports. I had one student describe you to me as jazz in the Twin Ports. You embody jazz in the Twin Ports. So we'll see you around. But do you have any parting wisdom as someone that's been in this building, in the Holden Fine Arts Center, about as long as anybody else, for students coming in, for professors that are still here, for people that are potentially just glancing at the arts passing by? Is there anything that you would really like anyone at UWS to know before you leave?
For students, if you have an interest in music, this is a great spot to pursue that interest, whether it's as a major, whether it's as a minor, whether it's as a non-major, participating in one of our ensembles. And if you feel like you may be somebody who's open to the idea of the study of music, then see where that leads. See if that's something that is the right fit for you. Maybe you could become one of us music addicts, and it becomes a lifelong addiction, a lot healthier than certain other kinds of addictions, and something that you come away with something of value. I also want to say that UW Superior is a fantastic community, and I look forward to remaining involved, if not as an instructor, then as a supporter and as a patron. I think that we have a great situation here. We have a great community, and it's kind of our little secret up here. I think it's not a lot of people outside the area kind of know about us, and I'm not just talking about music now. I'm talking about the campus, and it's kind of like a well-kept secret. But maybe we can find a way to spread the word.
Greg, thank you so much for taking this time. My final thoughts on this are that when I remember, I was there when you announced your retirement during recital class about this time last year, and it was very sad. There were a lot of people, you could feel the breath taken out of the room. And then in the lead up to this, I was personally expecting all of this time to be sad, and as of now, I haven't gotten that. It hasn't been sad. You are leaving exactly as you came to this campus, exactly as you've taught at this campus for so long. It was always going to be a fun time. It was always going to be smiles, and it was always going to be memories. So I want to extend UWS's sincere thank you for your time here, and thank you so much for everything you've done for arts in the Twin Ports, for all the students here, and for those like me who just had an outside sort of view and who just had their world broadened so much. So thank you so much for sitting with me today, and we wish you the absolute best of luck for what else comes.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a privilege to be here today, and been a privilege to be part of this community.
Thank you so much. That'll do it for the Promethean Podcast. For Maddie Schaefer and Carter Lansdale, my name is Xavier Walt. Thank you so much for tuning in. Safe travels, everyone, and good night. The Promethean is the University of Wisconsin Superior's one and only student-led campus news organization. With a monthly newspaper, podcast, and various visual stories, the Promethean is the best way to keep track of all things UWS. Be sure to find us at newspaper stands across campus, check out the latest stories at uws-promethean.com, or at all the Promethean social medias for all the latest happenings around campus and beyond.